Hey, what's up, people? How's everyone doing? Long time no see. It is, I won't say the reintroduction, but the debut episode of the Salty Thoughts of Mike Steph. Yes, I told y'all when I finished before that Donnie Ooh has been retired, to say the least. But the face is the same, the mind is the same, the voice is the same, and yeah. So the podcast is the same, just under a different name. But this time, for the first time, I think, matter of fact, for the first time ever on these YouTube streets, I actually have a guest. Like, whoopee for me. No, I have a very special guest. I'm going to let him introduce himself, even though you see his name over there. Yeah, there we go. You see his name, but Mr. McDowell, introduce yourself to the audience of the Salty Thoughts of Mike Steph podcast.
Oh man, I would love to, Mike. Well, thank you so much for having me. My name is Tyler McDowell. I am what am I, man? I'm an Arizona kid, Arizona man through and through. I am the co-host of the Gimmick Infringement podcast with my former colleague teaching at Marana High School, Brad Winchester. I know that's how we connected. Mike was through our shared podcast and shared love of wrestling, etc., which I know we'll get into. But Tyler McDowell is the government name, and yeah, man, I am so happy to be here. Obviously, I love your work, and not only us kind of sharing love for each other's work on the professional side of things, but you become a dear friend over the last year and change. So super thrilled for this relaunch. I love everything going on here. The colorway, the vibes you're going for, based on what I know of your direction for the relaunch. So so great to see you here, man. So honored and grateful to be your first guest. And I'm really looking forward to the conversation. I kind of have an idea of where we're going, but I know we got some surprises, and I'm thrilled, man.
Thank you. Like Tyler said, we met about a year ago, right into the lead into WrestleMania season. Through our which called shared friend, the Mojo King, the hidden gem czar himself. He kind of introduced me to McDowell and Winchester, or Winchester and McDowell. Yeah, that's one thing that hasn't changed. Yes, I will still say McDowell when it comes to.
And my name goes second. Listen, I respect that. Brad is my main man. Winchester and McDowell sounds like the better option. I like that. Rolls off the tongue.
Definitely. So what I appreciate about both of these brothers, from the left coast, is the fact that they kind of accepted me, real in which are like literally sight unseen. We didn't really visually see each other until like seconds before we pressed record on the Gimmick Infringement podcast last year. And I don't know, can't remember if y'all knew a little bit about my platform, but just the fact that y'all embraced me fully, flaws and all, was one of those situations like, you know what, I really appreciate these dudes. And of course I would have something try to mess up my debut, but we're gonna keep on rolling because if there's one thing that's gonna be consistent, is the fact that I really try not to edit but so much because I want it to come out with the full essence. I'm not a perfectionist. Well, actually I am, but when it comes to what we're trying to accomplish here on the Salty Thoughts of Mike Steph, I want it to be as authentic as possible. So I have a list of couple questions. I mean, I have a list of questions that I'm going to broach to Mr. McDowell. In no particular order. It's not going to be so much of an interview, but it's going to be somewhat of a guideline to try to keep me on a straight and narrow and not turn this, whatever, how long this conversation is going to be, into an all night affair. So, first and foremost, he did mention that he is in the educational field. So, Mr. McDowell, I would like to ask, what made you get into the teaching field?
Wow. That's That's a great question. That's a big question to kick it off, man. I'll try to be relatively brief. I say that knowing this is going to go on for several minutes, so buckle up. I went to school. Well, first, let me kind of trace back to when I was growing up. I have two wonderful parents. I feel super blessed to have them in my life still, and they set the expectation that I was going to go to college. So it didn't matter where or what I wanted to study, but from an early age, I knew that after graduating high school, that was going to be my path. So I had ambitions originally. I'll keep it all the way real with you, Mike. I had two goals in life. One was to become the point guard for either the New York Knickerbockers or our beloved Phoenix Suns. That was option one. So your man's was nice with it back in the day. Elementary school all-star, right? Like that was me. I had the Allen Iverson, the answer wristband that covered like
Okay.
half of my forearm. Yeah, headband Jones. We were serious with it. The style was impeccable. The jump shot, but of course, like I think many of us, right? We had the hoop dreams. And then on the other side of things, especially as I got older into high school and I realized maybe hooping wasn't my route, I had a dream of becoming a co-host of 106 in Park. And
Really?
yes, yes. And this might be controversial, but it's my truth. I was definitely a Terrence and Roxy 106 guy.
I was about to ask.
Listen, brother, I came after AJ and Free. All love to the GOATs. They're amazing. But Terrence and Roxy were my era. And so I don't know if you remember Roxy Diaz.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I remember. I remember.
that's
Like
okay.
I'm of
That's
the
a disrespectful response.
I'm of the age of AJ and Free.
Listen,
So
free is the
Free
queen.
to
Free is a
me
queen.
was,
Hmm.
hey babe.
Hello to the sponsor,
The Roxy. Like I said,
Mike.
which one I
Mike.
admire.
I need you to put some respect on Rockzilla's name. If I'm gonna retweet this, I need some perspective. And I don't know if you know, she's 40, and I don't know if you follow
Okay.
her. I don't know if you follow her on the IG or the
No.
Twitter, but you just would never be able to guess it, man. Free's a queen, Roxy's a queen. We don't have to choose. We love them both.
Yeah, both of them.
So
Thumbs
so
up.
I was of the Terrence and Roxy. I'm so glad to speak about Roxy. I don't do that enough. Obviously, huge crush on her. Thought she was magnificent at what she does. I love Terrence J as well. And I thought, like, man, this would be cool. I think I want to do this. So got to college. I studied journalism. So I stayed in state. I had this kind of internal conflict of, do I stay in state and go to school, or do I go out of state to attend an HBCU? So the idea of a historically Black college was super intriguing to me,
Okay.
especially junior, senior year of high school, when you start getting those questions from elders and from your school staff about, well, what are you going to do when you get that diploma? I started thinking, as one of the few Black students at our high school, like, man, it would be really cool to be around people who look like me, right? Peers of my age who perhaps have some similar life experiences. So I thought about an HBCU. It was definitely a grandiose dream. But when I started factoring in tuition and, oh, you actually got to pay for college, it's not like public high school, that dream kind of faded. So stayed in state. I went to the University of Arizona, which is about 2 hours south of my hometown. So I'm definitely a Phoenix, Glendale kid.
Okay.
Um, a lot of your listeners probably know Arizona because Phoenix is a huge city. But 2 hours south in Tucson, near the Mexico border, there is a wonderful place called the University of Arizona. Probably best known for our men's and women's basketball teams. Go Cats. And I went there. I studied journalism. And here's answering your question. I told you this is going to be a lot of exposition.
Listen.
So I got that journalism degree on time, luckily, by hook or by crook. I walked across the stage. And I just didn't feel the same passion for journalism that I thought I would. So to make a long story even longer, I don't think you know this about me actually. I I enrolled or applied and got accepted into a program called Teach for America.
Okay.
So basically, they take new college grads, and place them in various regions across the country to teach. So, Arizona kid, I got placed in Memphis, Tennessee. So I spent summer 2015 living in Memphis, at least part of that summer.
Wow.
I know,
Okay.
yeah. So I was in Memphis for not the whole summer, but I think about 6 to 7 weeks. So a decent amount of time learning how to become a teacher. There were probably, I want to say, maybe 30 to 40 peers who were there with me, who were also moving to Memphis, and cool experience. But then I had some family stuff come up, and ended up moving back to Arizona. So on one hand, I know you and I have spoken offline about just life transitions and how to maneuver through the ups and downs of
Yes.
of being a human being. So that was a huge transition. Family stuff came up, moved back to Arizona, left Memphis completely. Lots of good barbecue in Memphis.
Mm.
But left Memphis completely, came back to Arizona. I was working at a ballet studio for for a minute. I always lead with that, but then I clarify I was not a teacher. I was not a ballet instructor. I was just working at the front desk, and that is only because a family friend owned the ballet studio.
Listen,
One
get
of
in
the
where your
few
business.
one of the few black owned ballet studios in the state, might I
Okay.
add. Yeah, so they were exceptionally dope and generous to me. I worked that job for a little bit, but then I got into teaching, right? So I was working at a high school in their college and career center back in Tucson. So I came back to Phoenix, but then a few months later moved back to Tucson, accepted this job as a college and career person in the counseling department. But then that following year, Mike, finally 11 minutes in, uh, finally that next year, I got my first teaching job. So in terms of like, what led me to teaching, when I went through this early midlife crisis of, okay, I did this college thing, I got my degree, I checked that box, but I don't want to do the journalism thing anymore. Um, I just wanted to figure out, like, how can I make a positive impact on people, and what can I do that hopefully seems like I'm maybe fulfilling a larger purpose to society. I know that sounds very Hallmark like, but that was my thoughts at the time. And I just reflected on how much I love stories, how much I loved writing. So as a journalist, I was writing a lot.
Okay.
Obviously, in English, you're reading work from writers and you have writing assignments. So I had some English credits from college. I thought about the teachers that made a difference in my life, who I still kept in touch with from high school. And it was kind of a no brainer from there. I thought, okay, I'm going to be a high school English teacher. So I spent my first year in 2016 teaching high school English at Marana High School in Southern Arizona, about 2,200 students, rural community, um, some Confederate flags you can spot on your way to and from school. So
Okay.
that's probably a whole other episode of just the challenges of working in an environment that has so many tremendous students, families, and adults, and also a community like many communities that has some folks living there that have a lot of backwards views and dangerous views.
Yeah.
Um, but I love that community so much. I worked there for 5 years teaching English, freshman and senior English. I met Brad Winchester through there, so shout out to Brad, and that's how GI ended up becoming you know a star in the sky that ended up becoming an actual plan, an actual project that we turned into a podcast at GI Pod 19. Um, and then moved back here and taught. So anyway, you don't need to know my whole biography, even though I just gave it to you. Your question is what led me to teaching. I wanted to find something that would give back to the community that I would also enjoy at the same time, and that also would pay me for my talents. So teaching was that, um, but I just never considered teaching prior to this early midlife crisis I had. You
Okay.
could have told me, Mike, back in the day when I was 15 or 16, if you would have told me that I would have ended up becoming a teacher, I mean, you should have just told me I would have been an astronaut. Like teaching just seemed impossible to me. I didn't even consider it until I was in my 20s. I think in part because I didn't have very many teachers that look like me or look like us where I
Okay.
grew up. I had great teachers. But in Lowell, Glendale, maybe not so Lowell anymore. The Super Bowl was just here, but in Glendale, Arizona, the parts where I grew up, not only were there not a lot of Black and brown students, but educators wise, man, I didn't have one Black teacher in high school, so I just never even pictured myself being in this profession. I didn't even know it was an opportunity for me. So I wanted to give back. I wanted to find something I would enjoy, and luckily, I eventually mustered the confidence and the certifications needed to start in the classroom. And although a challenging profession, certainly, it's been foundational to so many blessings, to so much good in my life. So I probably gave you hopefully everything you wanted and then some. My journey to the classroom was definitely scenic, but so grateful that life has led me there.
Yeah, because I always wondered what brought you into the teaching profession, especially as young as you are. Um, because like in my experiences with, because I have 4 children, and through my experiences with them growing up and going into school and having parent teacher conferences, or just matter of fact having relationships with their teachers, um, one thing I've noticed from the time that I was in school in the middle, the early '80s, late '80s to now, is the age gap of how teachers were. Like when I was in elementary school, you had teachers. Let's say your third grade teacher was still in that school. By the time you graduated high school, you can go back to your elementary school, and that teacher would still be there. When my kids were growing up, within, let's say, middle school, sixth, seventh, eighth grades. That's 3 years. Within those 3 years, by the time they got to eighth grade, the teacher that they had in sixth grade was gone, long gone. Like I remember my daughter Mia, she was in eighth grade, and they was prepping for the statewide test and the New York Regions test and so forth. And one of her, I believe, her English teacher left 3 months into eighth grade. And not only did I find that kind of messed up, because I'm like, okay, this is a pivotal year in all these students, early school career. They're prepping for these tests that, especially in New York, is like the end all be all of education, of your progress in school. And you decide to leave 3 months in, right? Maybe about a month and a half before they have to start taking these tests. And my daughter, even at her young age of 13 at the time, she felt abandoned by that teacher. And it's not even like he told the class, like it wasn't his responsibility to, but it wasn't like he told the class, like, look, this next opportunity came up. I'm sorry, I got to take it, or family reasons and so forth. I got to take it. It was like Monday morning came, Mr. Walker was gone, and they
Wow.
found out from other teachers, and then pretty much they had to cobble or get together a staff to teach English.
Wow.
And
Not informing your kids of that decision is curious. I would wonder what was going on with Mr. Walker. That's yeah, I think if you're making the move, like you said, even though Mia and her peers were only 13, 14, you still owe it to them to let them know, because like you said, yeah, your teacher leaving is a pivotal, it's a pivotal moment.
and but what like I said, what I've noticed, like with my younger children going through school, it was almost like a revolving door. Especially a lot of the teachers, especially in New York City, we have charter schools. I'm quite sure there's charter schools throughout the nation, but I'm speaking specifically of New York City. And a lot of the charter schools, the teachers or the educators in the charter schools are very young. Like they came out of college. But how I felt was more along the lines of, these teachers are not looking at this as a career. Matter of fact, I won't say as a career. They're not looking at this at the way you explained it, like, all right, I'm going to give back to the community I'm in. I'm going to give back to the next generation and give them aspects that I didn't receive, or I didn't see a representation of how I looked when I was looking at it was more of, all right, this is for this check until the best opportunity comes up, and now we're gone. And to
Mm.
me, that's kind of taking the soul out of education. And that's why, in some respects, I feel like the students don't have, or don't take don't have darn, I'm losing, I'm blanking for the word, but they don't take ownership of what they're dealing with, because they're feeling like, all right, the teacher, either they're which going on Fridays, they're trying to rush through because they have to get out to school for happy hour. Like that's really the mentality. Like we knew, like in charter schools up here, it's like every time you have a vacation, they're always off that Monday. And me and my wife were discussing. I'm like, Dawn, I wonder why. And I was like, you know what? She was like, well, because she works in the charter school, and she's like, well, what I feel is a lot of them are going back home. A lot of them are not really from the city. So if you have a long vacation, like we just had President's Week here, so the students were out for the whole week. Now, my daughter Kay, she goes to a district school. She's no longer in the charter school. She goes back to school tomorrow. My wife, who works in the charter school, she goes back Tuesday because they give them that extra Monday for them to come back from wherever they travel to during the off time, and they call it Teacher Development Day. No, it's not Teacher Development Day. It's okay, we're going to give you this extra day to gather yourself, to have, to get yourself ready for the upcoming week.
I got you.
So that's why I was so interested in, like I said, being how your age or how young you are, for you to make this investment into education and continuing, even in a different field so much, but still being able to impact students on seeing who's going to be the teachers of the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I have so many thoughts there. Thank you for sharing that. That was really enlightening. So you mentioned about, Mia having that 8th grade teacher and Mr. Walker leaving. It's interesting to know, obviously you are the king of New York. You are based on the East Coast. I think here in Arizona, we face a lot of those challenges you alluded to, and no two teachers are the same, especially in terms of teachers who leave. Here in Arizona, it does feel like a revolving door as well. And I think maybe this is a different podcast, but there are myriad reasons why. I think first and foremost, I don't know about New York and the data and the numbers, but here, first and foremost, there's a concern about teacher pay. So I think a lot of folks enter the profession and are really excited and energized and just passionate to try to do a good job. But then they just want to experience growth financially. So I know quite a few teachers who ended up going into the realty space. Okay. So they were teachers, but then ended up selling homes. One, because you're still serving others and providing that happiness when you're helping people find their future home, but also because obviously when you think of a realtor, you think of definitely a heftier paycheck than a teacher. And then secondly, at least recently, I think about my own experience, right? Because I never thought that I was going to be the teacher to leave during the school year. To your point, Mike, I was even guilty of sort of bad mouthing other colleagues who left during the year, because I was in the classroom for 6 years. And even though that's a relatively short amount of time, I saw peers who left during the school year. Like too many to even remember, or too many to name, like people. And like you said, people who did let their kids know, and other folks who just left, like Mr. Walker. And where's Mr. Walker on Monday? Oh, he's in the Bahamas. You didn't hear? Right. And they just have to cobble together. So at least for me, I can just speak to for teachers leaving. Hey, you have to tell your kids. That's number one. I don't think that's cool that Mr. Walker didn't do that. And then two, there are so many factors, whether it's pay or I think a teacher's school site as well is really important. You want to feel supported by your administration, by your school board. The past few years, there's been a lot of videos on YouTube of, I'll say, unruly citizens going to school board meetings and touting like conspiracy theories about critical race theory being implemented in classrooms, and teachers trying to brainwash students toward a liberal agenda and XYZ. So I think every teacher is unique in that regard. But for me, it was not necessarily feeling supported in a new school district. Of course, I felt like I wanted to level up money-wise. Like I signed the contract, I knew what my paycheck was. But then when you're living the reality of it, you're like, man, it would be nice to just, I don't know. I just turned 30 this year, Mike. You know this. I wanted to reach some financial goals, because I just, it was important to me. So I know for me, at least, leaving the teaching profession was one of the toughest jobs, or one of the toughest decisions I've made. Luckily, I'm in a position now working at Arizona State University, the big college over here. I work for their teachers college as a student recruiter. So I'm visiting high schools all the time and community colleges, and trying to recruit students to the profession. So in many ways, I think I'm still involved in the business of education, not the business, but the world of education.
Yeah.
My role just definitely has taken me out of the classroom in a sense, but I still feel really fulfilled by it. All that being said, the end of my response, I definitely see myself re-entering the classroom, whether that's back in a high school, or if I'm somehow able to finesse myself into a college setting. The desire is there for me. I don't want to compare myself to CM Punk, but I think I needed a break from the profession. I think I needed a break. I think I needed a break from the profession. I think this applies to a lot of us, Mike. Maybe for you, maybe for our listeners, where you're in a job for several years, you love it most days, but then at some point you become maybe a little disgruntled,
Oh,
or frustrated by the system, dare I say, and then you just, timing may not be great. You may be worried that you're disappointing a whole bunch of people, but for your own wellness, physically, mentally, emotionally, you just have to chuck up the deuces and say, hey, I'm leaving, and it is what it is in this case. Um, and so I've done that, right? And luckily, I had a position that I could fall back on, and really grow in. But I'm definitely returning to the classroom one way or another. I don't know where that'll be. I don't know when that will be. But I miss kids. I miss. I mean, you have four of them, right? So you know how incredible kids are, and although I'm not a father, I hope that I've made a difference in some kids' lives, or just I helped create a positive experience for kids, hopefully. And if it's for kids who look like me, then that's even a double bonus. So all of that to say, I miss teaching in so many regards. I am going to end up back in a classroom one way or another, but I think it's okay to embrace changes and transitions in life, even if they don't come at the optimal time. I think ultimately, Mike, like you and I have spoken about offline, you have to make sure you're right, mind,
yeah.
body, and soul. And if you're not, if the job is contributing to you not being right, I think sometimes you got to be a little selfish. But all that being said, Mr. Walker, total heel move to not let his kids know. I let my kids know. And although it was gutting, um, I just feel grateful to have leaned into this transition. And yeah, teaching is just amazing. And it's in many ways, it feels like the Lord's work to me. I definitely don't attend church as much as I should, as the son of a grandson of a preacher, but teaching is just, man, I have so much respect for my colleagues who are teaching, Brad, and so many others, because you're doing the work from here, from the heart, every single day. So shout out to Kay, shout out to Brad, shout out to everyone in high school right now, students, adults who are just doing their thing, and I miss it a ton.
It's funny that you say sometimes you got to get to the point of just saying deuce, peace. Because, like, without divulging too much, I mean, people who know me personally pretty much know what I do for a living, but I work with the public, like the public. It's not even like a segment of the population. Like, I work with the public. And this year in July be 20 years of me working at my shoot job. Now, the way the job is set up is, you do your 25 years of service and you got to be 55 years old to get your pension. I've come to the conclusion, um, because of some personal stuff that I've talked about, dealing with my emotional well-being and my mental well-being, that there's no way in hell that I'm going to do a total of 28 years, because by the time I'll get 55 years of age, I will have reach my 28th year, and I'm not doing that. Besides the fact that I really can't wait to get out of New York, which is blasphemous to say to a certain degree, because I always thought I would be here. Like I'm born and raised. I thought I was just gonna be here. Yes, New York Knicks. Oh, trust me, I'm gonna get to that.
Wore the cap just for you.
Definitely, thank you. So I've come to the realization, like for my physical health, for my emotional health, for my mental health, that I'm gonna do my bare minimum, which is my 25 years. All right, there'll be a 3-year gap. All right, I won't be able to collect whatever, but how am I going to be? How am I going to enjoy my quote unquote pension? I'm going to enjoy my quote unquote retirement if I'm not well. You can't. You can't. And in which go a slight tangent. I finished binge watching the last year of The Walking Dead. Right. Yeah, the last season of The Walking Dead, and I coined a term of where I work as we are The Walking Dead. Reason being is it seems like a large percentage of people within their first year of retirement end up passing away. I don't know if it's due to the work environment, which it probably is, the stress of the work environment, which it probably is. But a lot of people within their first year, you always hear, oh, yeah, such and such passed away, or such and such passed away. Oh, damn, they just retired like 6 months ago. They passed away. So for years ago, I'm like, yeah, we're the Walking Dead. It's almost like once we take ourselves out of this toxic environment, it's like our body goes in shock of we're not used to the hustle and bustle. We're not used to stress. We're not used to getting cursed out. We're not used to getting things thrown at us or whatever. It's like our body just decompresses, and unfortunately, like you pass away. So I say all that to say I understand why sometimes it comes to a time that for your well-being, for you and your family, you have to say peace. But one other thing that I'm going to transition to, and when you said you like to do this, you feel like it's God's work of teaching. Who would you, or should I say, what would you say formed your moral compass?
My parents, first and foremost. So I reference them a lot. A, because I love them so much, and B, I'm an only child. So growing up, it was just me, right? It was my parents, our cat, and myself. So I definitely felt not only did they give me values to start my life on, of integrity, service, so on and so forth, but also I kind of created this internalized pressure that, okay, I look to the left, I look to the right, no siblings, I don't think any siblings are coming my way, it is on me to do this right, because I'm their only. My mother, I've turned 30 earlier this year, and my mother still calls me her contribution to humanity.
Oh, okay.
All the time,
Wow.
to other people, to me. I know it's like, Ma, thank you, and also, okay, I'm gonna try my best. So for me, it's of course started with the two of them. My late grandmother, my dad's mom, was also someone who I spent a lot of time with growing up. She was just a wonderful, wonderful lady, and they just really set the foundation for me. And they, as I grew up and I saw friends, particularly late high school and then definitely getting into college, I saw friends or just other acquaintances sort of dabble in different vices and just really just being out here and living their best lives.
Yeah.
I don't know that that was ever really appealing to me. I certainly felt like a square some weekends, but also I was always so concerned with messing up, right? I was so worried that I can't afford to mess up because of this scholarship, or because what would my parents think, or X, Y, and Z. And I don't know if that's an inherently only child thing, but I was always so worried about that I tried to do the right thing in every instance. Did I? Absolutely not. I am. We were speaking about flaws earlier. I am just as flawed as they come, but which I won't get into, of
You
course.
hide
Right?
them well.
I'll keep this pristine image of myself, but hopefully, when I mess up, I apologize and try to do better. But yeah, for me, it started with them, and then also I wanted to just harp on 2 points, and I think this is related to what we're discussing now. For me, the last year I spent in the classroom, COVID was also a huge factor.
Okay.
So the community I've worked in, both schools, filled with amazing people, amazing kids, amazing colleagues, fantastic. COVID was just such a huge factor. So obviously, we won't get fully into that, but I just remember colleagues being out because they tested positive, students being out, and it was just a lot. So that was a huge factor I forgot to mention. Anyway, I share that. Second point, speaking of high school, is in terms of my moral compass, and in terms of me even getting into teaching, I attribute a lot of that to the election of Barack Obama.
Okay.
So by no means do I have this idyllic, Barack Obama was the perfect politician. Every politician we support some things they do, don't support others. I know you've gone in depth on this on previous podcasts about your local politicians, my man.
Oh
But
yeah, Benson.
I will say in much more expedited fashion, so much of my life is just goes back to high school, right? I was a sophomore in high school here in Arizona when Barack Obama ascended and ultimately was elected to the presidency. And for me, of course, it was beneficial that he was representing the party that my family and I were in line with, right, in the Democratic
Yeah.
Party. But party aside, just the sheer power of me being 16 and seeing this man who looks like me ascend to the very top of leadership in America was was so impactful and hit me in such a profound way that I thought, wow, if this skinny guy who's kind of a hooper, who's left-handed, who has a beautiful wife and two amazing kids, and right, we can go all through his background: single parent home, a really unique name for America and American politics. If this man can be so excellent and so brilliant and be elected to be the president and the first black president of the US, and it seems like as politicians go, his moral compass is pretty strong, then what can I do if I try to keep my morals in check and if I try to treat people with the kindness and respect they deserve and just not just mitigate mistakes, right? If I can do that, what can I achieve? So for me, it was my parents first and foremost, and my grandmother on my dad's side, and then also my family in New York and New Jersey, who I didn't see often, but I knew I was representing them. And
Okay.
then also, honestly, I don't know if he's going to listen to this. I hope he will. But former President Barack Obama. It was really, those were kind of the central figures in my life. Roxy Diaz, of course, as well. But those were really the central figures. I kind of attribute it, and then I want to pass it to you, Mike. I kind of attribute it to being on the basketball court because basketball has been so fundamental to my life. And I played point guard for a lot of my life. And as a point guard, your job is to make others better and make others look better while mitigating your mistakes. So you really want that nice assist to turnover ratio.
Yeah.
Hopefully you give out a lot of assists that contribute to the success of a lot of people while not needing credit for it, but also you don't have 10 turnovers, right? You're mitigating mistakes. You're trying to look on the floor for what's a possible mistake. Let me go the other way with the rock. So I think a lot of my mindset was also just attributed to basketball and coaches I had of let me try to bring this point guard mentality into my shoot life and into my real life. So that's I think that's what shaped my moral compass, my family, the ascension of former President Obama, basketball and those lessons. I just try to treat people well and believe that the universe will come back and take care of me tenfold.
That's interesting. Like when you started off and you said being an only child. Um I'm not technically an only child. Um Sister Ooh, how you doing, babe? My lovely sister Ooh. Um Sister Steph now. No, actually, no, it can't be Sister Steph because it's already Sister Steph. But Sister Ooh, look, regardless of whether he's retired, she's always Sister Ooh. My sister's 15 years older than me. So she got married when I was maybe about 5. Like I was the ring bearer at her first wedding. So that's how much the age gap was. So pretty much our mom raised me in the household. I was the only child in the household because my sister was starting her family. Um, Moral compass. Of course, I always have to default to my mom and my grandma, and my aunt Jackie, to a certain degree. People who remember Aunt Jackie, they're probably like, huh? I'm like, oh yeah, yeah. Trust me, there's a reason. Um, but my mom and my grandma, I will always have that voice in the back of my head of, in my older years, I would kind of go close to the line. Like I would kind of determine where the line is and pretty much go as close as possible without going over. Cause I pretty much wanted to see what I could get away with. Um, but when I was younger, it was always that voice in my mind, in back of my mind, like, Michael, don't you dare. I would hear my middle name, and since pretty much this is a reinvention, I'm going to let it all out there. My middle name is Andre. I can't stand that name. I hate that name with a passion. When I would get in trouble, or when my mom would deem that I was in trouble, she would do like old school parents would. She wouldn't call me by my first name. She would call me by my middle name. And that's kind of the reason why I hate my middle name, because she would say, Andre, Andre, come here, Andre. And the way she would say it would be it would be like a droning. And I would know, oh, shoot, I'm in trouble. She's calling me Andre. But I would hear that in the back of my mind, like, Andre, you better not, or because somebody else got away with stealing these chips from the corner store, you better not steal these chips from the corner store. Or your curfew at 9 o'clock. You best to come your butt upstairs at 9 o'clock, Andre. So, and then in my older years, to be blunt, um, I would say God would be my moral compass, because, ain't this something? On my debut episode of the Salty Thoughts of Mike Steph, I have lost connection from Mr. McDowell. Now, hopefully, he'll be able to reconnect. Very, very much so. In a few minutes. So I'm going to try to, keep this thing going until he comes back on. Damn StreamYard. And I'm blaming StreamYard. Like I said before, you see what this cord is? This is my Ethernet cord. My Ethernet cord. Meaning it's not me. And it's not Mr. McDowell either. It's StreamYard. Because I'm quite sure he's hardwired, just like I'm hardwired. So it's not the Wi-Fi, and it's not spotty internet. It's spotty StreamYard.
Well, you listen. You look great. You sound great. I think we're back. Fingers crossed.
Oh yeah, we're back. Like I was telling them, like, yeah, I'm gonna have to try to keep this on, because I got the message that you're coming back in. I'm like, all right, just gotta, do a little cha.
Hey, improvise.
But yeah, like I said, to be blunt, it would be God, because like I always knew if I was doing something I had no business doing, I always knew that. But
yeah, you heard that voice. I caught that before.
I've always heard that voice, and I've thought of it like I've been in so many situations that could have went way to left.
Amen.
And my current situation would be totally different.
Talk about it.
And it's almost like, a piece of a chess piece on the board that, all right, you're in here. No, we're going to move you over here.
Amen.
All right, whatever happened over there, that no longer concerns you. Like, not to get too much in depth in it, but there's 2 instances. And my best friend, when he watches this, he's going to be like, Mike, with these NDAs, I told you about these NDAs, but I'm not going to mention no names, right? Because to tell you the truth, he wasn't involved, but we was together. So there was this one time on my old block, which go back in the 90s, that was the hangout spot was like you kind of migrated toward the corner. Now, I wasn't really a corner boy. Like I had friends that were, but I wasn't really a corner boy, right? So a lot of times, if I was on the corner, if I was staying there too long, my people would tell me like, "Yo, Mike, what are you doing? Like, don't you got anything? Don't you got something to do? Like, other words, we're over here for a purpose. You're just hanging out. You need to go someplace else." And at the time, I didn't realize it. At the time, I didn't appreciate it. Looking back, especially when I had kids, I used to tell them of my experience, like, sometimes people appreciate you for being you and not for what you're trying to be. So they knew I never was trying to be super hustler. They knew I was never trying to be super gangster or whatever. Like, I drank, I smoked, I had my girls or whatever, but that was me. But I didn't do anything else. So, like I said, long story short, I'm there, and we're just hanging out on the corner or whatever. And sure enough, these cops come by, and they tell everybody to disperse. It wasn't even like we was doing anything in particular. It just seemed like it just kind of like pretty much progressed that there was about 15 people in the vicinity. But it wasn't 15 people together. We all knew each other, but all right, these people are having a conversation, these people are having a conversation, so forth. And of course, we're a little rebellious, like, what the fuck you mean? We don't gotta move, blah, 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 blah. Next thing you know, fire truck comes. I'm like, fire truck? Why is there a fire truck at 12 o'clock at night for the police trying to get us to move? They called the fire department. Do you know what they were planning on doing? They told us all to line up against the wall. They were going to hose us down. Now, they're patting people down, see if we had any paraphernalia or so forth. And let's say I'm like seventh, I'm number 7. And I had some marijuana on me. And I'm like, oh God, I can't afford to get no ticket. I'm not trying to get arrested for having some weed on me. And they, right before they got to us, they pulled the hose down, and pretty much one of the head police officers, like, you know what? I think they got a call. Everybody, get out of here, because don't have us come back and y'all still congregate. Consider this a warning. Get out of here. And we kind of, like I said, we realized they were about to hose us down. And sure enough, everybody's like, you know what? We're never going to give them no lip. Everybody went their own way. I was like, I think it's time for me to go home and get out of here. I think I had one child, my oldest son at the time. He was like maybe like 2. I'm like, yeah, it's time to get out of here.
But it's an idea of a chess piece, though, of like, what if that officer didn't have that? Okay, it's time to go.
Yeah,
right.
Now another time, and I'm going to say this one instead of the one I was going to say. My family was living in Pennsylvania. Like, me and my family lived in Pennsylvania, let's say about 6 years. We lived in Easton, home of Larry Holmes. Everything was Larry Holmes down there. Go figure. Now, X amount of years later, they done gentrified Easton, Pennsylvania, and there's not many of us that's really there. But at the time, we was deep. So, it was Thanksgiving time, and I was having problems with my car. So I had a minivan, a Dodge Caravan. This was like 2005. So I had a Dodge Caravan that was a 95 Caravan for like 10 years old. I bought it for $250. I knew it was a lemon. I put some stuff in it or whatever just to get from A to B. And then I bought another car. And that car ended up having like an alternator problem or something. So in my infinite wisdom, I'm going to take the plate from the car with the alternator problem and put it on the Dodge Caravan, even though I actually turned in the plate for the Dodge Caravan. So pretty much the registration, there's no registration on this car. But I needed to get my family from Pennsylvania up to New York to spend Thanksgiving with me. So I take the bus down to Pennsylvania to get my van, and we drive up. No incident. Fine. So we go to take some holiday pictures. I think probably was Kayla. Yeah, we probably took some holiday pictures for her. So we're coming back, and we're in Brownsville, Brooklyn. Drop one of my in-laws off. Now, me forgetting that, Mike, you don't got no registration on this van. Your plates are bogus. You need to be quiet. We drop him off at another cousin's house, and it's cross street from Precinct, and that area was kind of hot. So pretty much they were looking to see if anything was out of the ordinary. So we see another come like, hey, cuz, what's going on, cuz? They're like, yo, Mike, what's going on? Da, 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 da. So we drop him off, and then we go to the corner. I make the left. I'm going back home. Sure enough, there's a cop car right behind me. I get to the light. I make another left. Now I always drop out of book. I put my signal on and everything. As soon as I make that left, whoop, whoop, pull over. I'm like, okay. Now at this time, it was me, my wife, my 4 kids, and my sister-in-law. So we're deep in that van. They ran my plates. I had Mitsubishi Galant plates on a Dodge Caravan. Now, mind you, the plates were still in my name. It just wasn't to this car. So, cop pulls me over, and he's like, "Let me get my. Can I see your license and registration?" I'm like, "Oh my God!" So my wife, not realizing the severity of the situation, is there any reason why you pulled us over, officer? And I shouldn't do that because I know my wife is like, I do not sound like that.
That's been the best part of the story. Please continue.
I'm embellishing right now.
Sure.
So so he was like, the reason we're pulling you over is because you got Mitsubishi plates on a Dodge Caravan. So he goes back and he runs. I guess he's running my license, see if I have any warrants or anything with me. I'm pretty much I'm straight. I'm a squid for the majority of the thing. Even though this is kind of some crooked shit I'm doing now, but for the most part, I'm a square, right?
It's a little crooked, yeah.
Yeah. So,
yeah,
So I
just trying to be with the fam.
I was like, okay. So I put my hand out the window, and I was like, "Excuse me, officer, can I talk to you for a minute?" So he said, "Yeah." So I come out, and I go to him, and he's like, what you got to say?" I said, I show him my job ID. And he looks at my job ID, which will not be named. And he was like, "Oh, okay. I'm going to give you a break. Because if I do what I'm supposed to do, you're probably going to mess around and get suspended from your job. Because you're driving a vehicle with no registration, no inspection stickers, and plates that don't belong in this vehicle." So I told him my story. I'm like, "Look, it's the holiday season, it's Thanksgiving. My family lives in Pennsylvania, which money was kind of tight, so I couldn't afford 5 bus tickets for him. So I went down there, got my car that's been sitting there, and drove him up. And he's calling me all types of frauds. He was like, "You're a scam. There's no way you drove 2 states with a dirty car like this," and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, I did. He was like, "No, you didn't, and you're still lying to me."
Wow.
So he said, "Look, so who's everybody in the van?" I was like, "All right, it's my wife, 4 kids, and my sister-in-law." He was like, "Pff." Now my kid, I think my oldest at the time had to be about 12. So all my kids are young. He's like, "Look, this is what I want you to do. Take that home, park that car, and get them home safe. You little scam artist." And he's talking to me like pure T, you know what. And I got to take it because I'm like, all right, he's letting me go. Good. So So that in my infinite wisdom, I ask him, I'm like, is there anything that you can give me in case I get pulled over again to let them know that you kind of gave me the. He was like, absolutely not. If you don't get the fuck out my face.
Like, let me take this. Let me not try to overstay my welcome.
So I said, okay. So, but here's the kicker. So we go home. Now the next day I'm supposed to get my family back down to Pennsylvania. So I'm telling this is like, I don't think it's a good idea. What you scared?
Just like that.
I'm like, yeah, I am.
I am scared. Wouldn't you be too?
So we need to get home. I was like, all right. So I waited until about 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, figuring it's going to be light on the highways. I get them down about an hour and a half. I'll leave the car there. I'll take the bus back up. But late night, I know it like the back of my hand. I mean, back of my head. I can do it. So we're about half hour into the drive. We get into Jersey. Guess what? They got a roadblock. They're stopping cars one by one and asking them for their license and registration. So we're like 5 cars back, and I'm like, this is not happening.
Heartbeat intensifies.
Yes. We're the next car up. I don't know what happened. All I know is, by the grace of God, he let that car go. They stopped the roadblock, said, everybody, go ahead.
Wow.
Once again, okay. I'm not saying I was correct. I'm not saying that I had any type of, I was right in any situation. Like, because my thing was, in my heart, only thing I was trying to do, I just wanted to be with my family for the holidays, and that was the only way I could really think of getting my family up here in that particular situation. Because, like I said, money was short. Sure, I had to pay. I was paying rent in both places. Like money was short. But that's what I wanted to do. So maybe because my intentions were good, it was like, okay, you already got caught once and you really tempted fate, but we're gonna move this out the way for you to get your family back down there.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
So that's my long-winded way of saying, yeah, between my mother, my grandmother, and God, those were my moral compasses.
I love that. That's a heck of a trio.